You've reached the public inquiries line of the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Nova Scotia. For questions about standards and guidelines or our complaint process, please leave a message with your name and phone number. If you are seeking medical records, please include the physician's name. If you're calling to file a complaint, you may visit our website at www.cpsns.ns.ca to watch our video that provides important information about our complaint process. Once you watch the video, you'll have access to our complaint form. If you don't have internet access and want to file a complaint, leave a message. Our public support advisor aims to return calls within 5 business days. We are unable to help with access to care or respond to medical emergencies. If you're having an emergency, please call 911. If you're experiencing a mental health crisis, please visit the nearest emergency department or call the mental health crisis line at 1-888-429-8167. Thank you. Start recording at the tone. When finished, press the pound key.
Hi, Michelle. This is Scott Jors calling. My phone number is 902-220-9106. I'm calling back in regards to an email that you had sent me on May 8th, 2026, in regards to my inquiries about a sexual assault and questions about a serious privacy breach that were raised. Now, I understand that in your response you stated you're not going to communicate with me anymore on this issue, not because I did anything wrong, but just because that's what you stated. And I understand if that's your position. However, I am very concerned about the abuse that occurred and this issue as a whole, and I'm concerned that there may be other victims. So, I mean, if you'd like to take that position, then fine. That's okay. That's what you're going to do. But I am going to try to resolve this issue appropriately to protect other individuals as well as myself. Okay? So, it's your choice who you want to be in this. Now, in regards to this, I am going to be sending you a letter. This call here is actually going to be a summary of that letter. I'm going to go through it and just go through the sections. I'm going to leave individual voicemails per section. That way it doesn't get too long or I don't get cut off right in the middle of any one of these. Okay, so now what I'll also do in the end is I am video recording this call, and I have already called Cox and Palmer, Colin Clarke of Cox and Palmer, and who is the individual who received the transmissions from Douglas Grant and CPSNS where the privacy breach had occurred. And I've also contacted their privacy officer, Jane Bates, and left voicemails for them. Those are going to be included at the end of the video, and the links will be in the document that I send you. Okay? So, first thing that we need to discuss is that you had sent a response stating that I did not request a review. This is completely inaccurate. Now, inside of your response, you did quote Suzanne Husbands from February 20th, 2024. And if you actually go through that exchange, I in no way stated I did not want an appeal. Now, you are right that Suzanne Husbands stated you have until the end of day to request an appeal. However, you will note that at 2:16 p.m., which is about midday, she stated, I have confirmed you have not requested an appeal and just closed the cases. Okay? She did not give me until the end of the day. After I raised the serious privacy questions and stated that Cox and Palmer themselves stated they were a conflict of interest in regards to these parties and the conflict of interest regarding Stephen McNeil, she then just removed the same opportunity she gave me. So take a look at the time. At 12:16 p.m., she said that I've can confirm you have not requested an appeal. These files are now closed at 12:16 p.m. and that's also in the communication that I sent you, so you are well aware of that. Now, if you actually go back and look at your February 17, 2024 reference, I actually sent Suzanne Husbands 3 emails that day. I do not agree. I did not see this. This is at 12:04. At 12:08 a.m., nobody contacted me, and now this is outside the 30 days, as I was still submitting evidence. Obviously, I do not accept this, and my other submissions absolutely show I do not accept this, as I was still providing evidence. At 1:46, I'm telling you professional standards right now. If you do not reopen this case or accept that my submission to Crystal Morgan was to extend this, especially noting the inclusion of Hannah Marie Weimer, and it goes on. So I was requesting a review and asking for this to be opened. That context was omitted from your response. Now, if you jump forward, go back to Suzanne Husband's response at 12:16, you will actually find that at 12:25, so about 9 minutes later, here's what I said to Suzanne Husbands. You also said I needed to answer by the end of the day and then clearly retaliated and changed the conditions. So I immediately addressed that she changed the conditions, and you can see the times for yourself. She completely changed the conditions when I was clearly wanting to protect my privacy in a very serious issue where I could prove that serious abuse had occurred and that a sexual assault was not investigated by CPSNS as you are mandated to do. Right? These were very concerning and distressing issues that I was trying to deal with here. And I wanted to protect my privacy and the integrity of this process. And you can look in my communications. I said this is as much to protect Kristen Holm and Nancy Murphy as it is me, CPSNS, and Cox and Palmer. I was not being irrational. I was telling you specifically that that law firm said they were a conflict of interest. You stated it's up.
You have 20 seconds remaining to record
It's
your
up to
message.
You stated it was up to the lawyers to make that determination. I provided you with a definitive answer that came right from Cox and Palmer on that. They stated they were a conflict of interest. Now I need to end this call and I will call back with another voicemail for the next section. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Start recording at the tone. When finished, press the pound key.
Hi Michelle, it's Scott Yours again. I'm just moving on to the next section as I stated that I would. My phone number is 902-220-9106. The next section in the letter is called Privacy and Conflict Concerns. Now, when you had responded and took this information to legal, you had stated we only addressed the conflict of interest concerns. However, I stated there was a clear privacy breach caused by the conflict of interest concerns. So you can argue that you don't address the conflict of interest concerns, but you do have to address the privacy breaches under privacy law, under PHIA, that are caused by the conflict of interest. And you have to take reasonable steps to ensure that that breach does not continue and that it occurred. What reasonable steps did you actually take? Me asking you to contact Cox and Palmer or bring up that issue with Cox and Palmer is not irrational. It is a reasonable step, right? And let's look at the issue here, okay? So I was asking you not to provide any information to Cox and Palmer because of the conflict of interest to do with Stephen McNeil, right? Suzanne Husbands came back and said that I was violating Section 46, even though she didn't see any information that I'd posted anywhere or provide any type of examples like that, right? But let's consider what Suzanne Husbands could have done. She could have stuck with her statement saying, hey, we need to send an appeal reply, but we will also raise the concerns, the conflict of interest concerns with Cox and Palmer. She could have done that. That would have been a reasonable way to deal with this, and then you would have fulfilled your mandate of protecting the person's privacy, right? But she didn't even offer that, right? So what type of privacy assessment was done by any of these individuals to protect my privacy? I'm assuming nothing. You then went on to quote that Stephen McNeil did not have any access to my complaint file. I never said that Stephen McNeil did, right? My concern was that you transmitted information and you continued to transmit information. And in fact, Douglas Grant would go on to transmit more information to Cox and Palmer on April 29, 2024 in regards to the case with Hannah Marie Weimer, which was linked to this case. So Suzanne Husbands didn't take those steps, and so CPSNS continued a privacy breach. Well, in that case with Hannah Marie Weimer, I did report the sexual assault to her also. So there have been multiple individuals, Douglas Grant, Crystal Morgan, yourself, Hannah Marie Weimer, where this sexual assault was reported to, and it was reported to that it was committed by a doctor, and none of you have properly followed the channels to report this internally. Instead, you pushed it back on me. Right? But the facts are, you do not know what Stephen McNeil or any employee at Cox and Palmer did. You didn't take any steps to contact them. You can only be stating they just wouldn't do that because they are them. Right? Do you want to know what Kristen Holmes said to me when I reported the sexual assault to her? They know they're not supposed to touch you, and so her implication was it didn't happen. So these people just know they're not supposed to do that, so they didn't do it. So then I must be the liar in this case? Do you see how that abusive kind of tone and attitude only supports and protects abusers? People do bad things all the time, Michelle, right? And they know better. So why didn't these people just do that? It's just implicit innocence for them and implicit guilt for me. And that's exactly what led to this issue in the first place. And that's the exact mentality that protects these kinds of abusers. Now, you stated it's the duty of the lawyers to, you stated that you guys have no obligation in this process, and it's up to the lawyers to determine the conflict of interest and between that and the physician. but you were the ones transmitting my information to this organization, or to Cox and Palmer, right? It wasn't the physician. So then why didn't you alert Kristen Holm to say, hey, there's a major conflict of interest concern being done, you need to contact them? Did you even take that step? No, you didn't take any step while you continued to send my personal and confidential information to Cox and Palmer. Okay? Now, what's extra important about this is that I submitted to you and CPSNS an audio recording of August 5th, 2022. And I showed you Kristen Holm's notes of the interactions. She specifically used the name Stephen McNeil, and that's all that we had talked about. But in her written record, she changed it to Stephen Harper. Allegedly to make me look tangential.
You have 20 seconds remaining to record your message.
Okay, so I've just been told I have 20 seconds left to record my message. So what we're going to do is we're going to break this one off, and I'm going to call back and just finish up this section. This is the longest section. We only have like another section after this, and then we're basically done, okay? So I'm not going to take up too much more of your time.
Thank you. Start recording at the tone. When finished, press the pound key.
Hi, Michelle. It's Scott Yours calling back, finishing up the conflicts and privacy section. My phone number is 902-220-9106. So last going off, we were discussing the audio recording of August 5th, 2022, compared to Kristen Holm's notes, how she removed Stephen McNeil and replaced it with Stephen Harper. But she also removed Post Media and replaced it with Bell Media, which obscures the entire issue. The important factor here is that I walked down to Halifax Regional Police to file a complaint against Dan Kinsella, the Chief of Police, which would have involved Robin McNeil, which is Stephen McNeil's brother. I would then be arrested. The police would state they're getting me a paper to file a complaint, come back and just arrest me. Kristen Holm would then state that I'm delusional because of these public figures, as she changes the names of those public figures, so you wouldn't be able to actually see the conflict of interest that was with Halifax Regional Police, because she was told that Halifax Regional Police themselves called themselves a conflict of interest, and you can see that much in the police report, right? So then that was reasonably done to obscure that conflict of interest, which is now causing the same conflict of interest issue with Cox and Palmer. Now you're like, why would Stephen McNeil necessarily be involved in this? Because the issue that I was down there to file a complaint with the chief about was because in 2020, we did a serious investigation at Irving Shipbuilding, and it included the VPs, directors, and included the defense minister. It was escalated to the top of the Nova Scotia government, Stephen McNeil, and the top of the federal government, and involved the Irvings directly. All right? And Jim Perrin, commander of the Criminal Investigation Unit. There's the massive conflict of interest and why the police reasonably retaliated that day and stated they were a conflict of interest. Right? So in regards to this, I found serious issues. Very serious issues, which was reported to them. One of them being I found military IPs connecting to my systems. Jim Perrin almost turned white when he learned that. So on August 5th, 2020, I would send an email asking the defense minister for resignations. This would have been sent to all these parties and asked for this to be escalated and really laid out the issues. The next day, on August 6th, 2020, Stephen McNeil suddenly announced his resignation. Now, if you go and you can actually look at the links, they're popping up in the video here, you will see how serious the issue actually was and that this did involve those parties. Right? So this is really serious that Kristen Holm then removed his name from that record. This is why they're both a conflict of interest in regards to this. Right? This issue is going to go very bad for CPSNS if he comes forward, and he will come forward and admit that he knew about this issue. This is going to be bad for Cox and Palmer as well. They might turn around and sue you if you don't tell them about the conflict of interest so that they could reasonably ask Stephen McNeil. Right? Do you see the problem here? This is very serious. Now, in regards to this conflict of interest, on April 1st, 2026, I actually did engage Cox and Palmer officially through letters and through emails. And you can see that I provided pictures and copies of the letters and emails to Cox and Palmer along with delivery confirmations, asking them to please confirm the conflict of interest and address the privacy breaches. As of today, May 11th in the morning, we'll say May 10th, 2026, I have not received any type of response, meaning they're outside of their own regulated response times for these types of privacy breaches, as I did engage the privacy officer themselves. So I can show it multiple times. I have tried to engage Cox and Palmer, and they are not engaging even under their own privacy policies. right? So this is really only getting worse and worse and worse. However, I'm giving them another opportunity to address this, which is why you see the voicemails, and you can see that this letter will also include them in the two fields. So you will all have visibility on this issue and all of this evidence to be able to make proper decisions, right? I advise them I need to file a complaint regarding a sexual assault, and you are telling me that you're reasonably going to be continue to send them my personal and confidential information, knowing all of this information exists. So I'm asking them to please confirm so that my information doesn't get distributed to these conflicted parties, just as I'm asking you. All right, and to that, Michelle, it is unreasonable for CPSNS to tell me I need to get a lawyer to have basic conflict of interest or privacy questions asked. You are mandated to understand the requirements under PHIA and make sure that you aren't disclosing this to a party. And if you did cause a breach,
You have 20 seconds remaining to record your message.
And if you did cause a breach, you reasonably have to deal with it and quantify it so that it doesn't happen again. Okay? So anyways, that's the end of this section. We're going to jump into the next one. I believe it's the last one, so I can leave you alone at that point. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Start recording at the tone. When finished, press the pound key.
Hi, Michelle. It's Scott Jors calling again. My phone number is 902-220-9106. I'm just moving into the next section here. We're almost done. There actually is one more after this. Sorry. This section is duty to report vulnerable patient obligations in sexual assault. Now, when in my submission to you and in your response, you never answered any of the majority of my questions there. One of them was question 2, and the question was identification of the applicable professional obligations of a licensed physician upon receiving a patient disclosure of sexual assault by another physician within the same facility, including reference to relevant standards, policies, or guidelines, and whether CPSNS position that Dr. Holm met those obligations. You did not answer that or provide any resources on that. So I actually went digging and I found CPSNS's own standards. Now, I was taken in under the IPTA, right? Which means I was a vulnerable patient under the care of Kristen Holm, and a current patient as recognized by your own terminology on your website, right? Dr. Holm did not document or disclose any of the sexual assault or the abuse. I can show you that in that email I had sent August 3rd, 2022, the evening of, I talked about the man standing over me. Kristen Holm had already fabricated records at that stage, and the way she talked to me and belittled me as I sat there calmly, I had serious fears that she was going to retaliate. She already looked at me and said, he knows he's not supposed to touch you, so I guess it just didn't happen. I wish you could see how her and the nurse looked at each other when I told them that. I still get sick thinking about it. They knew. They knew what they were doing there. So, and then you said, oh, you don't know if this was against a doctor or not. Right in my submission to CPSNS, and in your acknowledgement of that submission on September 20th, 2023, this is right from your acknowledgement, not your acknowledgement, but that of CPSNS. She was told I woke up to a doctor standing over me who immediately touches my stomach very close to my genitals. I was shocked. Reasonably a sexual assault. So, Michelle, I very clearly did report this sexual assault to CPSNS and stated very clearly that it was regarding a doctor, and so that it should have triggered these provisions, but it didn't. And you didn't provide that information. Douglas Grant did not provide that information. The lead investigator, Crystal Morgan, did not provide that information. I contacted them multiple times about the sexual assault and left voicemails, and I have recordings of all of them. If they try to say I did anything wrong, please get the time, date, and whatever it is they claim, and I will provide you with it. I was very respectful and dignified. Right? But then you can actually go into your own guidelines. Physicians must immediately notify the college or the appropriate regulatory body upon forming reasonable grounds to believe that another physician or health professional is or may be putting patients at or the profession at risk due to incompetence, professional misconduct, including sexual misconduct, incapacity, yada, yada, yada. So there it is. And it says immediately. Dr. Holm did not act immediately. Douglas Grant did not act immediately. Crystal Morgan did not act immediately, and in fact, they didn't even record that it was a doctor, engage, or ask me a single question whatsoever. A physician who breaches this duty may be subject to disciplinary measures by the college. Similarly, physicians with good reason to believe a regulated health professional is impaired, incompetent, or unethical, there is a professional obligation to report these concerns to the appropriate regulatory authority. right? It states sexual misconduct with a current patient or a vulnerable patient and falsifying patient records. She falsified my records. She changed the names, and I provided direct evidence of that, which was a form of retaliation, because if you have to cover up those abuses or they're going to be investigated. That's reasonably what she did, right? And it should be investigated so that we actually find what's happening here. Now, when I reported this issue to Hannah Marie Weimer, she told me, obviously, you're making this all up. You see the record. I provided detailed records of everything I'm talking about here. All cited, hyperlinked, and resourced. I'm not making anything up. And if you ask me a single question, I will admit my bias in regards to this. Michelle, when that man touched me, I jumped back in my bed. I put my hands up in the air. I was shocked. If I would have swatted him away, what do you think those people would have done to me? Do you know how concerned my family is about that? They're like, Scott, do you think that maybe they did that to get a reaction out of you so they could justify something? I'm like, I'm not that paranoid. But now that I think about it more and more, that is a reasonable possibility.
You have 20 seconds remaining to record your message.
So this was reported multiple times, and you are well aware that Douglas Grant, the CEO and registrar, and Crystal Morgan, lead investigator, did not report this. You are ethically obligated to report this and properly investigate this. Douglas Grant could reasonably find out who that doctor was. So could you. So could Crystal Morgan. I've tried. I can't get any more names. Nobody's responding.
Send your message now and exit the system. Thank you. Start recording at the tone. When finished, press the pound key.
Hi, Michelle. It's Scott Yours again. My phone number is 902-220-9106. I got cut off on the end of the last one, but that was basically the end of it. This next section is pattern of privacy breaches, misrepresentation, obstruction within the CPSNS complaint process. So I'm going to give you 3 examples of serious privacy breaches being obstructed and covered up by CPSNS. Now, August 2nd, 2022, my book bag was given to a homeless man sketched out on drugs. They put a big sticker on it that said Scott and gave it to a sketched out homeless man on drugs. He then woke up the next morning, or not later on, hugging it, and he stated the police went through it. He came to me the next morning and said, dude, you can't talk around police like that. I woke up hugging your book bag, and they went all through it, and then asked me to rock, paper, scissors for one of the 20s. This was reported. Douglas Grant stated that there was absolutely no evidence that Nancy Murphy had anything to do with the transportation of my belongings, or that it was sent before I had ever seen a doctor. Because I said my belongings were sent before I had ever seen a doctor to Mount Hope. And that they reasonably knew they made serious mistakes, and so had to keep compounding this. Now, on the very first page of the Mount Hope records, it states, the client's belongings, including wallet, was brought to the unit with the previous client mistakenly. Scott's brown leather wallet and contents, as per valuables disclaimer, are in the locked cabinet. It's right there in plain text that this occurred, and he's making this explicit statement stating there is absolutely no evidence, because Douglas Grant did not do a proper review of this case at all. And I provided this to them in advance, and before he made this determination in writing. So he knew that this existed, or reasonably should have known that this existed. And inside of my wallet included my financial, health, and identity information. My health card was in there. They list my health card, which is a privacy breach under Nova Scotia Health Authority's own policy. And as per the Director of Privacy, Karen Hornberger, that breach must be reported in SIMS and was never reported. That's right. You're hearing this, and this makes me a credible witness because everything I'm saying is true. Next up, when I filed my complaint against Nancy Murphy, which is directly connected to Kristen Holm, because Douglas Grant even issued the findings on the same day, January 15, 2024, because they're codependent. When I filed my complaint around July 31st, 2023, you guys would respond with medical records. You acknowledged the complaint on August 15, 2023, and then you would respond with medical records on August 24, 2023. Around that time, I would get a call from a bailiff, and then he would show up August 31st with papers stating I'm being trespassed from Nova Scotia Health Authority properties. I opened it up. I get 3 copies, a pink copy, a white copy, and a yellow copy, stating that I was at Nova Scotia Health Authority properties, and that they read me this document, and that I'm being trespassed. And then it looks like the same person filled out the entire form, including for the witness. I was never at any Nova Scotia Health Authority property. I never said that I was, nor is there any record of me ever causing any issue at any Nova Scotia Health Authority property. And it was dated August 22nd, 2023. just before you guys would have responded. Reasonably, somebody must have gone there with my information that was not me, or they fabricated this using my medical information. I tried contacting Nova Scotia Health Authority, have somebody please clarify. Nobody reached back to me. I live 141 kilometers away from those facilities. I was never there. Right? Was this caused by the privacy breach that occurred August 2nd, 2023? But here's the key part. In addition to all this evidence of my book bag and everything, Douglas Grant himself later acknowledged, Dr. Murphy acknowledges that her documentation of the encounter was incomplete. So Dr. Murphy was aware that these issues existed with my book bag, with her records being incomplete, and now I'm just getting served by Nova Scotia Health Authority. It seems like this could be retaliation for reporting this kind of abuse. Regardless, that is a breach of my personal information, false claims that my person was at these locations, right? And reasonably associated again with my health card. And CPSNS, Nova Scotia Health Authority, did nothing about this and did not record this reasonable breach. And then we have the disclosure of my health information to Cox and Palmer, which is a massive conflict of interest and reasonably a privacy breach, which we have already covered in here. So there's
You
three...
have 20 seconds remaining to record your message.
So there's three serious instances of serious privacy breach and privacy-related issues where Nova Scotia Health Authority and CPSNS are not taking appropriate steps to mitigate these types of issues, even though they're presented with incredible evidence of that abuse, and possible violations of Section 46 and possible PHIA violations. Okay, the section's done.
Send your message now. Thank you. Start recording at the tone. When finished, press the pound key.
Hi, Michelle. This is Scott Yours again, 902-220-9106. So we're all done all the sections there. I just wanted to call and just let you know just the last little bit that's in the document there. So at the end of it, you will see a direct section again to Cox and Palmer. Again, Colin Clarke and Jane Bates will be on this thread and be requested to review this document in those sections. Everything I've said to you, you will find references for and direct images and infographics inside of this document. I can provide more information if you'd like. Now, I do need to state that you will see a section directly to our CMP, as there is an ongoing case in regards to this with the Special Victims Unit. It's 2025-21595, and I can guarantee you they're going to be asking many of the same questions that I am, especially about like Suzanne Husbands and Kristen Holm removing these records and then my book bag, which appears to be some form of theft, and these multiple privacy breaches and this sexual assault, right? This is why I want you guys to handle this properly so that, Michelle, you don't get in trouble. We don't know each other. You've done nothing to me, right? I'm trying to resolve this issue, not only for myself, but anybody else who might be abused. I am a technical expert of over 18 years. The information and evidence that I have is solid. Okay, there is an active CSIS case number, attachment 5566. That's Canadian Security and Intelligence Service. They're monitoring this entire case. And they're also a recipient on here because of the underlying national security issues at Irving Shipbuilding. Right? I was a member, like part of the production engineering part of this, and I found my GPS location set to a residence that was associated with some serious issues. Right? Like, they're going to need to answer these questions as well, which is going to motivate our CMP, and then they're going to point back at you. And I don't want that to happen, right? I want the abusers to be held accountable. Douglas Grant should be taking responsibility here. You know that, I know that. He made serious mistakes, and now it would be up to you to go after him. And what's he going to do? He's going to retaliate against you, reasonably, right? Because you're the weakest link in this process. What would happen if you filed a complaint against him and said, hey, you were supposed to investigate this? Right? This is as much to protect you as it is to protect me, because I know how these people operate, and I'm really sorry for putting you in this position, Michelle, but you're the person I have to deal with, right? So at the end of this document, you're going to see there is a civilian authorization for access to medical records held by Nova Scotia Health Authority under the ongoing national security investigation under attachment 5566. The next thing you will receive is an email from me, and it will be signed with my IDs and my health card authorizing CSIS to access any files with CPSNS and Nova Scotia Health Authority on my behalf. Okay? Now that request will probably come from Public Service and Works Canada, just for your reference there. Right? So that we can properly move through this investigation and they can see what's happening with Nova Scotia Health Authority, because the conduct is very concerning. And like I said, there are serious national security concerns at the base of this that need to be addressed. And I really hope that you take responsible steps here so that this stuff doesn't pass into your life, right? Have this sexual assault investigated so we can deal with this properly. Please, Michelle. All right, listen, whoever's listening to this, thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry for taking it up, and I'm sorry if I've wasted time for somebody else. That's not my intention. Like I said, I'm trying to protect any other victims that might exist out there. That includes you, your families, your friends, all of you, so that this process doesn't do what it did to me to any of you. And if it has, I'm sorry. But I can assure you I'm going to take steps to ensure this doesn't happen again. Not to me, not to you, not to your friends, not to your families. Okay? That's where I'm coming from. I think my heart's in the right place. I'd ask you to reassess where you're at with this issue and at least give me a chance to resolve this in proper due process. Okay, thank you very much, and you have a great day.